They've gone from 15-16 to champions of college baseball.
Welcome to the 1,544 Miles to Omaha podcast, talking about the past, present, and future of Cal State Fullerton baseball.
Top of the ninth, 3-1, Fullerton State leading Texas in the championship game of the College World Series. Here it is. Popped in the air, short left field. In comes Fishel, he's calling. The Titans of Cal State Fullerton are the champions of college baseball.
That one got in on his fist. Did he get enough of it with the ball carrying? It's gone! Dustin Garneau, a jam shot that carried over the 335-foot mark in left field.
Here's your host, Dave Lamb.
Welcome to episode 56 of the 1544 Miles to Omaha podcast. Before we introduce our first guest, I'd like to welcome all the new listeners to the podcast that have recently discovered us. We'd like to thank you for joining us and ask that if you have not done so already, please subscribe to our podcast so that you can receive alerts as soon as a new episode is released. Also, please leave a 5-star review on whatever podcasting platform you're listening to us, including the most popular ones like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, amongst others. A 5-star review will help other Titan baseball fans find this podcast easier. So now on to today's guest. Sam Favata is the first guest to have played on the 1979 Cal State Fullerton National Championship team, the first of 4 for Titan baseball. Primarily a middle infielder for Augie Garrido's clubs, Favata scored the winning run in the 1979 championship game, a 2-1 victory over the University of Arkansas. Favata was a 2-time All-Conference selection in 1979 and 1980 and still holds numerous records in the Titan baseball history books. Favata's 66 stolen bases in 1979 season still ranks number 1 today for the most stolen bases by a Titan in a single season. His 116 hits in 1979 is tied for first with John Fishel's 116 hits in the Titans' second national championship year of 1984. In 1979 season, Favata's .417 batting average led the Titans, beating out Golden Spikes Award winner Tim Wallach for the top batting average on the team. That .417 batting average ranks 4th all-time for a single season behind Gary Brown, Steve Woodward, and Mark Kotsay. In 3 seasons with the Titans, Favata averaged .363 with 22 home runs and 109 RBI. And in 1980, Favata was drafted in the 13th round by the Milwaukee Brewers. With all that said, let's welcome into the podcast Sam Favata.
Good morning.
Morning. So after hearing all of those things, still tops for stolen bases in a single season, highest batting average for a national championship team, 40 years later, some of those records still stand. What's your thoughts on? We've got 4 national championships, 18 trips to Omaha, numerous MLB draft picks, and 71 MLB guys have gone to the show. What's your thoughts on still being tops in the record book?
No, I'm very honored to still be mentioned with all these articles, and as we go back for the reunions and the alumni games, but very humbled by it. It was a great time. It seems like yesterday. 43 years it'll be since we won the national championship. But it's just I look at all the players that went through there before and after, and to be mentioned with, like I said, a Tim Wallach or a Mark Kotsay, these guys that made it to the big leagues and were very successful. It makes me feel very, very proud of what I accomplished at the time to help our team be the best we could that year, and it was a special year. 1979 was a very special year for us.
Well, I'm honored to have you on because I've had others that have been part of other national championship squads, but you're the first for 1979, and I'm hoping to get others. I've reached out to a number of them, and hopefully we'll be able to get them on in future episodes. But let's go to the beginning, and not just 1979. Let's go all the way back. So born in 1959, growing up, little kid in the 60s, teenager in the 70s. Take us through growing up from the start.
Well, I was born in Tampa, Florida. Came out here at 1 year old. So then I started at school the younger days in West Covina. That's where my mom and my stepdad and then my dad was they were divorced, but he was very with me all the time too. But I started playing ball in 1968, and what's a funny story is that I was a little league, 8 years old at the time. Now they have 5-year-olds that can play, but at that time it was only 8. You start, and I was having bad grades in 2nd grade. So my mom, I never forget, picked me up after I made the team in the tryout in Alhambra at the time, and says, "I'm pulling you out of the team before we start because you're having bad grades." And of course, I called Dad. They were divorced, I called Dad. You got to work this out for me here somehow. This can't happen. This just can't happen. And he agreed with my mom. And much as later on, he told me it was the hardest thing in the world. But I had to sit out the season. I didn't play. I took the uniform back, my mom, and it was and I never got bad grades after that. so my first
yay mom for having the foresight to do that.
Yeah, it was incredible, and I was crushed. But then at 9 years old, we moved to West Covina, and I started my first organized baseball Little League and played throughout 3 years in Little League there, and great relationships there. We did well, and then I guess when it all started to peak is when I was 14 years old. We had an all-star team in West Covina, 15 guys, and we won the World Series championship, the Pointing League World Series championship in West Covina in 1974, the first one for them ever. And I played with a lot of ball players that went to high school with me at that time as a freshman. And then we went there to Edgewood High School in West Covina, and then we won back-to-back CIF championships, and we lost 3 games in 3 years. So we were very fortunate to be, back-to-back CIF championships at Edgewood High School in West Covina. So that winning attitude was going. And what's funny, I tell the story too, is that at that time during high school, my freshman year, we have a banquet in June with varsity and JVs, and we're freshmen. And the speaker that night was a young little coach, about 35 years old, named Augie Garrido, that just got the job at Cal State Fullerton a year before that in 73. So I remember being at that freshman banquet, seeing Augie Garrido speak, and I told my dad, I'd like to play for that guy someday. Now I'm 14 years old, a freshman. Who would ever thought 5 years later I'd be part of the national championship team in one of the, better seasons that I ever had in my life. But he spoke there. It was a great night. And then, like I said, after high school, I got drafted by the Dodgers my senior year, 18th round. Turned it down, even though it was really close. I was good friends with Steve Garvey growing up and Maury Will. So, it was a dream come true. A boy from West Covina getting drafted by the Dodgers in the 18th round. But I wanted to do it, but they offered me nothing, hardly $10,000 to sign. I say no, thank you. I'll go to Cal State Fullerton, and that's when Augie was recruiting me. So at that time, now I'm going to Cal State Fullerton. They used to make fun of them in 1977, 78. Cal State Who they called them because nobody knew the small little school with 2 little bleachers. It looked like a Little League park. Just nobody, 50 people come watch us.
Well, before we jump into your time at Cal State Fullerton,
right.
Why baseball? You said that you wanted to play at 8 years old, but mom said no, you got to get your grades up. Why was it? Was it because at that time growing up in the 60s that baseball was king, or why didn't you play other sports?
Well, I did play other sports in high school. I was all CIF basketball player, 13. I love basketball. I love sports. I played golf, a lot of golf. But baseball, with my dad, going to the Dodger games since I was 5, 6, 7 years old. The Angel game, we went to the All-Star game, 1967 All-Star game at Anaheim Stadium with my dad, and I watched Tony Perez win in the 15th inning. But I just loved baseball. I just loved it. My dad would work. I worked weekends when he saw me. We just hit. I just loved baseball. I just loved the game. So when she did take me out of that, I was crushed. But after that, I just seemed that was my primary sport, even though I did a pretty good job in golf and bowling and basketball and all that. So football 1 year. But I just love baseball. I always wanted to be a baseball player. I always wanted to make it to the big leagues and sign a contract, and that was my dream. So when that time came at 17 years old and I got drafted by Los Angeles Dodgers, it was like a storybook ending or beginning to a career that I've been dreaming about with a transistor radio, listening to Vince Scully in 1966. And now I'm going to maybe sign with the Dodgers. So it was tough to say no to that. But I wanted to get, and it was funny. I called Steve Garvey the night I got drafted, and then after they offered me only $10,000, and he told me, you know what, it's too it's too high. 18th round. Go to school. Get your education. You're 17. I was always younger. And when you're 20, you have a chance to get drafted. You're going to be stronger. You're going to have your education. So he definitely veered me that way, too, even though I was thinking that way anyway to go to college. But, he told me to go to college. And
well, let's stick with Steve Garvey. How did you know him growing up?
What happened, he was from Tampa, Florida. He dated my cousin, my second cousin, back in the day. And what happened is that my dad, a Tampa boy, Steve Garvey's coming up in 1969 with the Dodgers. So my dad was always following the Tampa boys. Lou Piniella was from there. But Steve Garvey, 20-year-old guy from Michigan State, he's from Tampa. So what happens 3-4 years later in 1971, I'm at Westchester's golf course next to Playa del Rey, and I'm working there. I pick up buckets. I'm 12 years old. I'm hitting balls, playing golf. And I hear one of the guys go, "Well, thank you, Mr. Garvey." And I look up, and it's Steve Garvey and Cindy. And they're putting on the screen, getting a lesson. So, of course, I was pretty outgoing. I went over to him. I go, "Steve, my name is Sam Favata." And she goes, "Favata? Are you relationship?" And then my dad came over from the bathroom and said, "This is Steve. Oh, my God. Cindy Favata?" I go, that's my cousin." And my dad started talking to him, and he's 22. I'm 12. And he goes, "Well, where do you live?" And Steve says, "We live right down here at Playa del Rey, like a block from where I was." He goes, "We'd like to go to the games." And Cindy really started to get attached to me and said, "Oh, Sam, you could go with me to the games." I mean, it would happen that quick. And after a half hour talking, and all of a sudden, I started to go on the games at 70, like 20 games with Cindy would pick me up, and we'd go with Jimmy Lefevre's wife and Billy Buckner's girlfriend, because Billy was a rookie, and I'm sitting in the back, a 12-year-old with these girls, and I'm in heaven. Yeah. I'm in heaven, and we're doing the Dodger game, and Steve Garvey's playing third base, playing once in a while. He's throwing the ball in the stands. He's making errors. He's almost on his way out, not doing well. And I remember after games he'd come, and he was always great with me, and he always was with me and helping me, and Maury Wills would help me with stolen bases in the locker room, the old lead out. So you can see how much that got when I was 17. Fast forward 5-6 years, and here I am, got drafted by the Dodgers. And wow. So that relationship stayed close all the way through to, I haven't talked to him in about a year, but I mean, very close.
Right.
Very close.
Right. Jokingly, my wife is a Dodger fan. I grew up in San Diego, and I'm a Padre fan. So, obviously, Dodgers and the Padres, the rivalry. But we agree that we have common ground with Steve Garvey.
Right.
Because he played both for the Dodgers and for the Padres and had good career with both clubs. But that's a little bit of a side. So, you're at this banquet as a freshman, and you hear Augie talk.
Yeah. Very, it was just a inspirational, but he had charm about him. And he was a young, fiery young coach that just got a Division I job at Cal State Fullerton, close to us, 20 miles, 15 miles. And he had the passion, I guess, came across. How much he wanted to be successful and how much he wanted to teach. Not just the physical game, but the mental game, because that's more important than the physical game. You got to have athletes, but without mental, preparation, you can't win. You can't win. So when I saw that as a young 14-year-old kid, watching him speak, and that's my ultimate goal is to go to college possibly, and then of course the big leagues, sign with the professional ball club. I admired the hell out of him. I just thought this would be a great person to play for, even though, like you said, at that time we didn't really know Cal State Fullerton, the Arizonas, Arizona State, Miami, Texas. I can go on, but Cal State Fullerton, I thought they were the Tigers, not the Titans. First day at school as a freshman, I what's that elephant on the gym floor? And he goes, elephant. I just thought it was Tigers.
Right.
And there's Titans, and they explained that to me, the seniors and stuff. So, but it was great. I thought it'd be a dream come true to maybe play for Augie Garrido, in the future.
So when it comes to essentially getting recruited, what was recruiting, if you can even call it recruiting, back in the late 70s? Yeah,
I was 77. We had such a great team in high school, and most everybody got drafted or got major scholarship from our Edgewood High School team in 76, 77. So we had a lot of attention on us, a lot of scouts. You all lose 2 games.